If you are looking for ways how to save money in your kitchen, you have come to the right video. Whether you're affected by the rising food prices and or the increasing inflation, or just generally want to save money in the kitchen because you like frugal living, then I have a bunch of tips for you. And I tried to count them because it always sounds good when you have a video that says 25 plus ways how you can, and I actually lost count, so I'm not going to give you a number, but trust me that I have some obvious ones that you may have heard before, but then I have some tips and hacks that you probably haven't heard before. So let's dive right in. If you're new here, my name is Anya and I love sharing our heritage homemaking made simple, and that includes tips like these in this video. At this recording, it's the middle of summer, and here in Northern California we get so much produce, and this is really the time to stock up. Buy produce when it's in season, and then often it also is on sale because everybody has, let's say, strawberries and tomatoes and zucchini, and this is really the time to buy it. In the winter, if you're trying to buy the same produce, you often get hothouse raised tomatoes or tomatoes from other countries that have traveled a long time, so that's when they're much more expensive. And what you can do then with them is obviously you can eat them, but you can also can them, freeze them, ferment those vegetables. You can dehydrate to store for the winter or for times when these vegetables and those fruits are not in season. And then obviously buy what's on sale. Every supermarket every so often runs a sale of certain things, so that's really the time to stock up on these items and to grab them when you can. In terms of produce, also what you can do is grow your own. Now hear me out. Maybe you have a garden and you haven't started planting any fruits or vegetables. This would be a fantastic time to look into that. If you don't have a garden space, you'll be surprised what you can actually grow in containers. Like I said, tomatoes are really easy to grow in containers. Zucchini, I have grown squashes in containers, strawberries, and there's a bunch of herbs that grow in containers. So if you just have a little balcony or a little deck out front of your place, that's really easy. And even if you have no space like that, you can even grow some herbs on a windowsill and just get some fresh greenery year round. It's also worth looking into your area, whether there are farmers who have a pick your own program, which means you can bring your whole family, you can bring your kids, and then you just pick your own fruit, and at the end they weigh it, and that is a lot less expensive than if you bought it in the supermarket. If you live in an area where people have apple trees or any kind of tree or any kind of produce, they often end up with way more than they can use. And that's a good time if you have a neighborhood network to post a little bit on there. Scour your neighborhood network and look for people giving stuff away. Sometimes they'll barter, and sometimes they just have a big bucket out front and say, you know, help yourself, this is all free, lemons or whatever you have. And in terms of meat, we know that meat tends to be a more expensive item to buy. So yes, you've heard it. You may want to eat less meat. We try to eat the best meat when we can, but a little bit less of it. So there's ways that you can save money even if you like to eat meat. And that is, we always like to get a whole chicken because the per pound price is better on a whole chicken than if you just get the chicken breast. So you get the chicken breast, but then you also get the darker meat. And best of all, what I really, really love is that you can use the bones to make bone broth. And that same goes for bone-in meats that you can make bone broth with when you have pulled all the meat off of the bones. And then it's also worth looking into less expensive cuts. They often are perfect for braising and stewing, or using them in your slow cooker and your Instant Pot, and you will not believe how flavorful they often are if you just take the time to cook them a little bit longer. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that I love baking my own bread. In fact, I buy my own grains, and the upside, the advantage of having your own grains is that they store really well. You can keep them for years if you keep them in a dry, dark place in a sealed container. Then I mill my own flour and bake my own bread. And in our area, I have to say that if I were to buy the same kind of quality of bread, it would probably be twice as expensive. So that's another way. If you haven't been baking bread, I have a lot of really easy recipes, and that's something that you can learn and just do one step at a time and save some money that way. Now, speaking of bread, I have this linen bag right here. So even though we love our bread, oftentimes we do have maybe the end piece that nobody likes. And so what I do with them is I don't throw it out. If it's not entirely dried out like these are really dried out. You can make croutons with them or use them in a bread pudding or in a panzanella, in a bread salad. Or you dry them like I do, and then you make breadcrumbs from them, which is a super good way to reuse the stale bread. Something else that tends to be pretty expensive if you buy high quality is vanilla extract. And as you can see, I need to make new. It's a perfect time right now to make it for the holidays and for my holiday baking. And it's actually fairly inexpensive to get some good vanilla beans and make your own vanilla extract. And I do have a video on how you can make that, and vanilla sugar. How often have you needed tomato paste and then you have a can like this and you only need a tablespoon or two, and then you have the rest of the can, you don't really know what you want to do with it. You stick it in your refrigerator, you kind of forget about it, and then next thing you know, it's either dried out or it's gotten moldy or what have you. So here's what I do, because I often have that I only need a little bit of it, and then I take a piece of parchment paper and put dollops of, let's say, a tablespoon or so in size of tomato paste on it. I freeze it, and then I take those little dollops and place them in a Ziploc bag in the freezer. So next time I only need a tablespoon or two, I can just take one of those little dollops and I haven't wasted anything. Another way we love saving money, and really it is a mindset, and I think that all these little things add up. So if you do a lot of those little things, you can over time save quite a bit of money, and that is to buy generic. I love going to Trader Joe's, whether you have that in your area or you have an Aldi or a Lidl or some other store that has their own brand names. Oftentimes it is the same quality, but for half the price or for a lot less than you would pay for a brand name. And I know that making your own beans from scratch the night before, soaking them and then cooking them, is even cheaper than buying canned beans, but sometimes I just need something really quick because I have 45 minutes to make dinner, and then these always come to the rescue. Now, if you've been following me, you also know that I love using mason jars and weck jars for dry food storage or for storing my homemade butter. But you will be surprised if you start noticing how many glass jars you tend to buy over the course of, let's say, a month, and then actually, instead of throwing them out, saving them. So this was a bottle for some tea that we got while we were on a road trip, and I took the label off. This is perfect for canning, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And then this was some bouillon. When the container was empty, I stuck it in the dishwasher, and now I use it for my baking soda. Now, for some, this may go a little far, but I sometimes get a real kick out of what can I reuse, what can I repurpose, and what can I give another life before I throw it out. Have you ever bought a head of broccoli or some asparagus that comes with these rubber bands around it? You will not believe I have an entire little box full of rubber bands. I save them and I use them for everything all the time. And likewise, when I do buy some produce at the store and it has a plastic wrap on it, I have been looking at it and thinking, you know what, I can reuse this, because sometimes there are moments when I do need these. I love using beeswax wraps. I have a tutorial on how you can make your own. but there are moments when I actually do need a plastic wrap, and this is pretty big, and I save it. Now this is a little bit of a variation of what I told you about my tomato paste hack, and that is lemon juice. So oftentimes I either have a lemon that is so big and then I cut it up, I juice it, and I have more lemon juice than I actually need for my recipe, or I end up with another half and before it's going to go bad, I want to juice it. So I just fill the lemon juice into one of those ice cube containers, put them in the freezer, and then I transfer them to a Ziploc bag just like the tomato paste. And when I have another recipe where I just need a tablespoon of lemon juice, I can just go to my freezer and take it out. And the same if you cook with wine, for example, that's the same thing. If you have a wine bottle that you haven't finished and before the wine goes kind of stale and doesn't taste quite right anymore, you can do the same. Pour the wine into one of those freezer ice cube containers, and then you have your tablespoons, your portioned amounts of wine for cooking. And if you love elderberry syrup as much as we do, you know how expensive that is in the stores. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that oftentimes I drive around our area and I have located elderberry bushes, and I pick the elderberries whenever they're ripe and then I juice them. I have a juicer over here and I juice the elderberries. So right here I have probably 2 quarts of elderberry juice. You can heat up the juice and then put it in a container just like that, and this does have a little bit of a, I call it pop top, and you know if you have a good seal, and then or you just keep it in the refrigerator or you make your elderberry syrup right out of it. But you'll be saving so much money because if you go and forage the elderberries, they don't cost you anything, and then you have saved so much money because elderberry syrup in stores is really expensive. And likewise, there are things out there that if you start driving around your area, you will find wild plums, and you can find crab apples, and you can find herbs. So there's a lot of things that I love to forage, and the more you look, the more you will find. Now I have a few more tips, and I also wanted to make it really easy for you, so I have created a free printable download that you can find in the box below this video that you can print out and paste on the inside of your kitchen cabinets, and you can look at it and you can check off the little tips that you want to incorporate into your daily living, or just as a reminder what you can do to save money. If you want to start cooking more meals from scratch, because that is really one of the ways you can save a lot of food, eating at home, making your own coffee shop drinks at home, I have an entire playlist here with lots of really easy recipes because I don't like when recipes are too complicated. So click on this playlist and I'll see you in those videos.